Hey guys, my name is Andrew, you're watching Tonka's League Gaming, and in today's video, we're going to be doing an updated meta-analysis on the Pioneer format. Now, a lot has changed since my last video, so I don't really want to waste too much time. I want to go ahead and go into the discussions about these decks and kind of get you caught up on what's been happening in the last 2 weeks. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it, starting with a deck that I was really wrong about in my last video, and that was Orzhov Auras. I mean, what happened to this deck? This deck was on everyone's mind. You know, 2 weeks ago, everyone thought this was going to be definitively the best aggro deck in the format, and we've really seen the representation fall off the face of the earth. And I think it's because there have been a lot of better Loris decks that have come out that use the Loris engine a lot better. Though you can replay a lot of your enchantments, and though that's a really powerful resource churning, resource reusing strategy, the problem with that is that once your creatures start to die over and over again to some of these top decks, you just fall so far behind that you just don't really have a footing to step back on. I mean, there have been so many games that I've played Orzhov Auras where I start the game and I have 2 cards in hand, 2 creatures in hand. One of them gets Thoughtseize away, I play the other creature and it gets killed. Then on turn 4, I play Loris, then play Favorite Hoplite, and then both of them get wrathed away. And then that's the end of the game. Like, it doesn't matter if I hit them for 6, 2 turns in a row. Guess what? They still have 20 life, and some of these decks even gain even more life on top of that. And that's just not fast enough to be able to withstand some of these top tier decks. So that's why I have it in the rogue section. I wish it weren't the case, because I think the decks are really, really cool, but unfortunately, that's why I have it in the rogue section. The next deck I want to talk about is one that I didn't think was going to do as well as it is now, and that one's going to be Azorius Control. Now, this is one of my favorite decks, and that's because a lot of these new Yorion builds of Azorius Control are doing really well. The fact that you can reset your Teferis and reuse them again with Yorion. The fact that a lot of enchantments that you were already playing, like Omen of the Sea, get reset by Yorion to add more advantage, just makes the deck so much better and so much more powerful. And that right there is why I think it, at the very least, is in the tier 2 section, but it might even get better than that. So definitely watch out for it, and that's why I have it in the tier 2 section. The next deck I'm going to be talking about is going to be the 4-color Super Friends Fires of Invention deck. This one has definitely impressed me, not only because, just like with Azorius Control, and it's a lot of really good synergies with Yorion, but also it has some really cool tricks on top of the fact that you're going over the top against your opponent. So on one hand, you can win the game without Fires of Invention by being able to play a lot of these really powerful, really game-changing Planeswalkers. And then on top of that, if you do have Fires of Invention, you can just play this game where you play Fires of Invention, and then the next turn you can play a Planeswalker, play Yorion, blink that and the Planeswalker after you use it, and then you have all of your mana available to play even more cards. And I just think plays like that make it so powerful that a lot of these decks, even though they are fast and they are powerful, if your opponent's just doing everything that you're doing but better, sure, you may be at a low life total turn 3 or turn 4, but you're able to turn things around so quickly that I think that it's hard to play against a strategy like that and win after 3 games, especially because a lot of these decks have changed their sideboards up to ditch the Fae of Wishes package and play more cards that are good when you take out when you take out Fires of Invention. And I think that's really smart, because with an 80 card deck, you already have access to a lot of cards as it is, and you're gonna need to take a lot of useless cards out in different games, in different matches. So you're gonna need a very powerful sideboard to be able to choose your resources throughout. So definitely having a tier 1 section is one, and this is a deck I'm really excited about. The next deck we're going to be talking about is going to be Doom Foretold, and I'm going to have this in the rogue section. Now, I do think that this is a very sweet deck, but honestly, my main problem with it is that every time I've played with it, it just doesn't win fast enough. It doesn't have a win condition besides Yorion that just wins the game right on the spot. And with your matchups against combo being so bad, I just don't see this being anything better than Rogue. Now, I can be wrong because the representation is definitely there. I just don't see the power level being there. So, with that said, I have Doom Foretold in the Rogue section. The next deck we're going to talk about is Lotus Breach. Now, I still think this deck is tier 1. Now, the representation, unlike Doom Foretold, is definitely not as much as it was before, especially 2 weeks ago. But the combo is still powerful. It's very consistent. You don't need to draw your whole deck to win because you do still play the Fae of Wishes package. So you can go get stuff like Ugin and slam that and win the game off of that. And I just see any deck like this where the skill ceiling is so high and the ability to reach your combo is so consistent as being a deck that's going to stand the test of time. And I really like decks like this, which have made itself known throughout many formats. And I still think that with all that said, it's still definitely a tier 1 deck, even though the representation might not be there. Now, the next one we're going to be talking about is going to be Sacrifice, and I have that in the tier 2 section. This would be like tier 1.5 if I could have a 1.5, and the main reason is because this deck is super good against a lot of these spot removal decks. You know, Dimir Inverter and other decks like it where they're playing a lot of black and red removal are gonna have a hard time against this deck because you're playing things like Feed Artisan, which can turn into a 6/6 and a 9/9 after you dump so many cards into your graveyard. And its ability to gain life and win the game on the stack is so difficult to play against because it's not like you're countering a card or you're trying to get rid of a problematic permanent. Instead, you're trying to race against your opponent's resources that are already hard to play against. Now, I will say what keeps this from a tier 1 deck is your difficulty against combo decks and your difficulty against Graveyard Hate. Graveyard Hate definitely puts this deck way lower than I would normally have it. And if it wasn't so reliant on the graveyard, I might have it higher than it is now. But for that reason, and for the reasons I've listed, I'm going to keep this at the tier 2 section. And the next deck I want to talk about is, in my opinion, my favorite super budget deck, and that is the Jeskai Cycling deck. This deck is super cool. It's very similar to the Zenith Flare style standard deck that you're going to see in standard, and I really like it because it's very fast, it's very consistent with its win condition by Zenith Flaring your opponents in the face for like 20 something damage after you cycled your whole deck away. But again, the big problem with this deck is your combo matchups and your ability to recruit your engine after losing everything. It's not like you're playing Loris where you can get some of your creatures back. You're playing Zerda, and though Zerda makes some of your cycling cards a lot cheaper, it doesn't reduce it to 0. And yes, that would make it broken, but that's kind of where I would need it to be in order to be any higher than this, or have some kind of cycling card that just puts it way over the top versus the rest of the format. So until I see a better list, I'm going to keep this in the Rogue section. And the next deck I want to talk about is going to be Garuda Combo. This I'm also going to be putting in the Rogue section. I would put this probably in the tier 2.5 if I could. I think this combo is very powerful. Your ability to play Garuda from exile that's safe from being thought seized, being able to play it and then copy it over and over again. It's a combo that once it goes off, you definitely win the game. But the reason I have it in the Rogue section and not tier 2, even though it does have a very prominent win recently in one of these big leagues on Magic Online, is because you just get it countered. A lot of these other combo decks are just doing things that are going to be much easier to pull off, especially when you don't have the ramp to back it up. And that's really all it is. It's very all in. It's very glass cannon. If you don't get to Garuda very quickly and be able to cast it and win the game on turn 4, it just falls apart. And once you don't have that, you might as well just scoop. And though your sideboard's okay, I just don't think the sideboard helps it enough to kind of get it off of its feet once it starts to losing. So that's why I'm going to have it in the rogue section. The next deck we're going to be talking about is going to be Rakdos Aggro, and I'm going to keep this in the tier 2 section, kind of towards the back, because though it's really, really good, I'd rather play something that's a lot faster if I'm going to play an aggro deck, like some of the ones we're going to be talking about later. And for that reason, there's not really a whole lot I can say about it. I mean, yes, Obosh doubles up your damage, and Obosh can win the game right on the spot, but I'm not interested in playing an aggro deck that wins when you slam a 5-drop. I'm interested in a deck that doesn't even get to turn 5. I'm interested in turn 4 and turn 3 kills. And it's possible with some of these other decks, and that's what I'm more interested in. So for that reason, I have it in the tier 2 section. And the next deck we're going to be talking about is going to be Burn. Loris Burn. In my opinion, this is the best aggro deck in the format. Being able to play Loris and being able to replay some of your small creatures that are just going to get in over and over and over again is just incredibly powerful. Your ability to recur your resources with Loris, your ability to consistently get those burn spells off and before your opponent's able to combo off or try to go over the top is just so powerful and so quick that it's kind of hard, even through life gain, to win the game. Because remember, this is not your typical spell-based burn deck. You have this engine that's able to keep playing over and over again because you have Loris now. And I'm always a big fan of burn, and this specific burn deck, in my opinion, is the best aggro deck in the format. So with that said, that's why I have it in the tier 1 section. Now I'm going to talk about what, in my opinion, is the best deck in the format, and that is Dimir Inverter. Now, the reason I have Dimir Inverter at number 1 is kind of based off of why I thought it was going to go away from the format. Last video we had, where last time I said, if this deck doesn't have some kind of build that either gives it a good reason not to play a companion and stand up against them anyways, or is able to incorporate companion and still have the combo in, it's going to fall out the format if you can't do those things. But with these new Yorion builds, these new Yorion lists, you're able to get everything together. You still have the Dimir control aspect with some new cards like Oath of Jace and Trial of Ambition, but on top of that, you still have your combo. And honestly, adding 20 cards, though it makes your combo less consistent, remember, you don't need a combo to win. You didn't need to do that beforehand. You can just win by having a 6/6 and a 4/4 flyer attacking for 10 every turn. And that in of itself is, in my opinion, the reason why, out of any deck in the format, this is the best control style deck in the format. So with that said, that is why I have it in the tier 1 section. The next deck we're going to be talking about is Mono White Devotion, and I'm going to have that towards the end, like the tier 1.5-ish area, where I think that though the Walking Ballista style combo is great, I think this deck struggles against other combo decks and struggles against some of the other aggro style decks that are in the format without being able to make up for it by having crazy synergy with Yorion in comparison to what other people are doing with the enchantments. Now, I know they're playing a 60 card deck and they have a splash for blue in some situations to be able to add even more power to it. But since I've seen the representation go down and down and down recently, I just don't see this deck standing up to the top of tier 1. Now, don't get me wrong, this deck is incredibly powerful. And don't get me wrong, I think that the combo is still very, very good. I just, in comparison to the other Yorion decks, especially the other Yorion combo decks, I still think that this is one of the worst ones. And I mean, it's alright, it's definitely gonna win you some games, but in my opinion, the most I could do is put it at the tier 1.5, tier 1 section. The next deck we're gonna be talking about is gonna be Boros Feather, and I'm gonna have this in tier 2, probably about right here. The Boros Feather deck is very fast, just like the Burn deck, and very consistent in keeping its engine going by being able to scry the top of your deck over and over again. But what I like a lot about this deck is that because it's playing a lot of protection spells too, you're able to protect your big creatures at the same time. Now, I will say this, it does struggle against a lot of decks with a lot of spot removal. Even though you're playing a lot of protection cards, I can't really put it any further, any higher than tier 2. But definitely watch out for this deck. It's definitely got some representation, and that's why I have it in the tier 2 section. And the last deck I want to talk about is going to be Niv-Mizzet. And Niv-Mizzet I'm going to put about right here. I think Niv-Mizzet is definitely a powerful deck and is just incredible in its ability to refill its hand with Niv-Mizzet, to be able to cast your Bring Delight into Niv-Mizzet and then draw you a new hand, being able to have all these silver bullets in your hand that just auto wins you some games, just makes the deck super powerful in of itself. But the main problem I have is that sometimes it just struggles just to stay alive up to that point. And this is kind of something I said last video, where you have some fast decks that just go right under it, and then you have some decks that combo you and keep you from interacting beforehand. Now, you do have some disruption in your deck, but I don't think it's enough to be able to combat some of these combo decks. So you're gonna have some games where Niv-Mizzet is just completely absurd, but against the top of the format, I think it struggles just enough to not putting anything higher than tier 2. And with that said, that is going to be our list. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the video, and if you don't mind, please stick around and watch the Mana Traders little ad at the end to kind of help out the channel. And yeah, that's really all I got. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Today's video was brought to you by Mana Traders. Want to keep up with the meta without spending hundreds of dollars on decks? Head on down to Mana Traders and sign up for a rental account, and if you use our affiliate link, you can support the channel as well. So thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you to ManaTraders.com.